Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn here. It's episode number 145, September 19th, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We have a special edition tonight. We have back in studio with us Maureen Bannon for our second interview. Maureen is back in town because we're in a political season, and Maureen is called to go to the front lines. And one of the front lines of conflict in this election season is Minnesota, where our partner in broadcasting, Senate candidate Royce White, is contesting for the Senate seat held for 18 years by Amy Klobuchar. 18 years. 18 years? Man, I got a daughter who's 18 years old. 18 years. But that's a long time to be in power, isn't it, Maureen?
It is.
Don't you think that's a little crazy?
It definitely. It's time for Amy to go.
Hey, Tanner, can you put up our shots here so we can look at each other, make sure we're all centered and good? Just put us up so we can see ourselves here. Thank you. Our producer, Tanner's in the studio today. We're excited. I'm glad you're back, Maureen. It's great to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Oh, well, we had a good time last time,
We did.
other than a few head leans and head fakes. As we get into this, what I say to everybody to start out, I'm sitting here with a West Point graduate, captain in the U.S. military, the chief executive officer of War Room. Is that your title, CEO? Are you CEO? CEO of War Room, which is one of the most important broadcasting media companies on planet Earth. And Marines traveling around the country because, and I know Marine, I mean, we've gotten to know each other. Marine knows what's going on. She knows that politics is war by other means. There was a German military historian, von Clausewitz, who said that war is politics by other means. So the inverse would also be true. And Maureen runs to where the lines of conflict are, where she thinks her time is best spent. Guess what? I do the same thing. I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to put my time, the little time left that I have here that God grants me, into this conflict, which I see very clearly from my street corner as republicanism versus basically communism. I mean, we could go deeper into that. We could say, well, if you don't believe in God, what do you believe in? Well, you would believe in the anti-God.
Mhm.
So you could get into it pretty deeply. But uh, I'm putting my time into it. But my line of conflict, where I am focused, is in Minnesota because politics is essentially local, so that everybody hears what I'm going to say now. You can go to TrumpForce47.com. There's still time for you to get off the couch and get in the game and do something. I mean, consuming political media is something. We have to be educated. We have to be aware. We have to know the history. We have to know how we got here. This is valuable time for me to put it together because I learn from it. I mean, I'm the greatest beneficiary because I'm doing all the work and I'm presenting to you. But it really is about getting in the game and doing something. And what we're finding out is there's still a lot of passivity amongst the people, that people are really not engaged with the seriousness of the events that we're facing. But I have Maureen Bannon. Maureen Bannon is here. I'm putting everything I have into it. Tanner's participating. We're actually, running towards the front lines of this thing. We want everybody to do that. But I wanted to ask you, Maureen, where are, other than Minnesota, where are the other key contests that you're monitoring, that you're watching, so that we have a better picture of what's going on out there? Because we, this audience, and almost all the American citizens, we're concerned about our neighborhood. But Captain Bannon happens to be riding in the general's tank, so to speak.
Mhm.
So you are national. What's going on nationally?
Correct. So, I watch races across the country, but in key battleground states, so Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, those are where we're focusing not all of our time, but a lot of time in those states. Those are three of the main battleground states. And in Pennsylvania, working on voter turnout and getting more Republicans registered to vote than Democrats. And we're seeing that in Pennsylvania. And then in Arizona, and I believe I shared this article with you and Royce yesterday about how there's now 100,000 uh, ci- citizens, and I use air quotes for that because they were deemed US citizens and now they're not sure about their US citizenship. So that is a state that we will very much be keeping our eyes on because it is a highly contested Senate race and there's some congressional seats up for grabs in Arizona as well.
What we have, in my opinion, is a growing movement. It's growing, right?
Mhm.
Would you agree it's a growing
It
movement?
is.
But what we're lacking is the citizen engagement. We're undermanned at the wall. We
Well,
don't have enough people.
I think that, in past elections, people have sat back and let other people that have already been in the battle or on the front lines continue to fight and think that I don't have to get involved. I'll just let them fight this battle for me. But, I know in 2022 and 2020, it was said this is the greatest election of our lifetime. You need to get out and vote. In all seriousness, 2024 is the biggest election of our lifetime, at least my lifetime, and everyone needs to get out and vote. They need to make sure they're registered to vote, their family members are registered to vote, and not just registered, but that they actually go vote. Your vote matters, so you need to make sure you go vote. I personally, because I in 2020 was not in my home state for election night because I was working and doing election night coverage stuff with War Room. So I voted on the last day I could early in person, and I made sure to watch my ballot go in and be counted. That's not for everyone. You know, people within the Republican Party or the MAGA movement have different ideas of how you should vote. Scott Pressler talking about voting early. Other people within the MAGA movement say vote on game day. We have to come to a general consensus for the MAGA movement, so we're not telling everyone 20 different things and getting people confused. But what you were talking about getting involved, and I don't know if everyone can see my lovely, notebook. For War Room, I was asked, how people can get involved, so I don't know if you want me to go.
Hold that one,
Okay.
because there's 2 things you said there that I want to just comment on,
Mhm.
because eventually we'll get out of this kinda straitjacket of back and forth, and we'll start talking because Maureen and I like talking to each other, and I don't we're
Oh,
gonna
no,
go there. You got that bookmark.
yeah.
Great. Okay, the first thing was, please vote. Okay. Do your civic responsibility. Please vote. That in and of itself.
Well, even here in the state of Minnesota, in the primary election on August 13th, Amy Klobuchar, and she was not uncontested in that Senate in that Democrat primary. I think she had 2 or 3 opponents. She had 303,000 votes cast for her. In the Republican primary, there were 8 candidates, and total among the 8 candidates, they had, I think, 198,000 votes cast. So it's clear that in the state of Minnesota, either they're not enough Republicans registered to vote, or they just didn't come out for the primary. Either case, Republicans in the state of Minnesota need to make sure they're registered to vote and get out to vote. Do you really want Amy Klobuchar back in Senate for 6 more years? Do you want that fraud? The person that covered up for Joe Biden said he was fit for duty. He was fit to stay in office. Really?
Before I forget the 2 points I wanna get to,
Mhm.
we're talking about voting. So, there is so much shaping of how I think, and it starts before I'm able to critically evaluate what it is I am thinking, and because I was taught to think critically by very intelligent people, I'm empowered to analyze what's going on to some degree, because a lot of what goes on for everybody is unconscious. We're motivated by unconscious things we don't understand. So, from the time we're in, second grade or third grade or fourth grade, people are saying two things. Your civic duty is to vote,
Mhm.
and America is a democracy with free and fair elections. These are judgments that are implanted into very young people. You discharge your civic duty by voting. That is your right. That is a tiny fraction of what the founding fathers of this country envisioned for the citizens when they set up our country's founding documents. Now, I don't think our founding fathers were envisioning cell phones and televisions and movies and cars. I don't think they were. I mean, they were living in a different kind of a environment where, interestingly, the most entertaining thing you could do was go down to the bar and talk to your neighbors. Other than that, you stayed home with your family and, waited for the sun to set. So people were much more engaged personally for entertainment. We entertained each other. Now we are really much more atomized as a people. So it breaks our communications. Now think back then. I mean, there was no Vikings football in 1776, right? The only thing to talk about was politics.
Mhm.
I mean, you really even couldn't talk about your diseases because they couldn't even get diagnosed. You lived, you died. That's it. So people spent a lot of time talking about the politics of the day because America was an experiment in self governance. And what is self governance? It's that I am the sovereign of my country, not a king, not a president, not a senator. So there was so much energy around the philosophy of republicanism. And I think our founders wanted a very deep level of citizen engagement in the operation of the country.
Mhm.
We've almost totally given that up.
Mhm.
So when you say, going back to that monologue you had,
Mm.
that people in 2020 or 22 or 1975,
Yeah.
whatever year it was, we have abdicated and we have vacated our power.
Mhm.
And we believe just by voting, we've discharged our duty because that was the judgment that was given to us in school. And that's a lie.
Mhm.
Okay. They just lied to us. Our duty is to self govern. Our neighborhoods, not, the best of us might end up going to higher office, but in our own towns, in our own neighborhoods, in our own cities, we leave it for other people. And who are those people? The dregs of our society, the dregs, the worst people that humanity has to offer, not in every case, but in most cases,
Mhm.
see that politics is a great opportunity to make a lot of money and do nothing. All they have to do is get on the payroll of the status quo and vote for the money, and they live a life of ease. And we're starting to find out there's a lot of other benefits besides money
Mhm.
because there's a whole infrastructure of other benefits. We might get to that today. Who knows? And the only way we get those people out is if we, the people, go in. So that's the first thing I really want to dwell on how important it is for us to go in and to not allow these really, truly awful people to continue to govern because, your comment was, we've let other people do it. But what
Mhm.
we don't realize is those people suck. They really do suck. And how do I know? Well, we're on the verge of nuclear war with $35 trillion in debt and the border's open. So if that is the sum output, we don't have the best and the brightest doing the work. What we have is the people on the payroll doing the work for somebody else. So I just want to say, and then going back to you're very kind, Maureen. You sit in a role that I am not in. So Marina and I have been having an ongoing dialogue about this vote on election day or vote early thing. And
Mhm.
Maureen was very right. If you know you will not be able to vote on election day, your vote is sacred. You need to vote early
In person.
in person, right? Now, we have many strategies here in Minnesota about how to start to work because this is another area where we're undermanned. There's an initiative here in Minnesota called Guard the Ballot that's been started by Royce White. We need, well, I don't know, maybe 8,000 people to participate in this to make it work. Now, there's many people in Minnesota and in every state that are very concerned about our election integrity. So here's one judgment. Your civic duty is to vote. That's a scam. Your civic duty is to self-govern. Nobody ever told me in civics class, hey, David Penn, you are the sovereign. You must govern. Really? No, they said just go vote. The rest of the time, watch football, have a good time. That's why the country screwed up. The other thing is free and fair elections, free and fair elections, free and fair elections. That's drilled in my head. It's such a judgment. And when we start to deal with the fact that there is so much slack in our elections,
Mhm.
then we're left with, oh, really? Then who's running the show? Which is something else we might get to today. How do we do this? How do we make free and fair elections? The citizens have to demand it. Again, we've abdicated our power and let these they're awful people, awful. How do I know it? I have to deal with them. I have to deal with them. You know, good people don't lie. Good people show up on time. Good people work. Good people pay for everything that they buy. They raise their children. They go to church. They're good, but they don't do politics. Guess who's doing the politics? It's not the person in the pew next to you at church. Maureen,
Uh-huh.
I know we've talked about this,
Mhm.
and I've been through a process with my brother Tom here, who'll probably listen to this. I'm going to say his name, Tom Madden. He's one of the most expert people on election fraud and lies and laws in Minnesota. And I remember when he started talking to me about this, man, I really resisted him. I did. In fact, before the 2022 election, where he was saying that elections are predetermined events,
Mhm.
I said, Tom, if you say this one more time, I'm going to knock you down. And he's tough. And Tom and I love each other so much. We've been divorced twice and we're still together. So that's how much we love each other. But Tom has convinced me because it's hard to come to grips with what's going on in our elections. Like we're going to talk about this Arizona situation. What we want to do in our Minnesota movement, we understand that things could break on election day. We understand the power can go off. We understand a pipe can break. We understand that the ballots might not be printed on the right side paper. We understand there could be a storm. We understand there could be a snowstorm.
Mhm.
But I'm a Republican. So when people show up and tell me to act like a Democrat, immediately I get nervous. I get nervous. Like I was watching Hillary Clinton this morning driving to the studio. She was on Morning Joe, and she was praising all the Republicans that are coming out for Vice President Harris. The Cheneys, the long list of neocons.
Yeah, are we really gonna call them Republicans?
Not anymore. We're going
Yeah.
to call them communists because
Mhm.
that's what they are. And communists, maybe in their perspective, is not quite right. They're just authoritarians.
If you're bragging that the Cheneys have endorsed you, you got something wrong. They're not good people.
Well,
Dick or Dick and
Liz,
drag.
Dick and Drake. That's great. I never heard that one before.
My dad says
That's
that.
good. Good. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. But the point I'm trying to bring out is we have to be Republicans. If I have to stand for 3 hours to go vote on one day every 2 years or every 4 years, because of course in the midterms, you're in and out in 5 minutes because people still aren't voting.
Mhm.
I don't think that's a lot to ask of American citizens. And we get to be there with our neighbors and talk to them and wait in line and it's experience to gather together. Don't tell me to act like a communist because then you're telling me to be a communist. So the people that are running around the party saying this, uh, they might mean well, they might believe what they're saying, and that's cool because there's a lot of things I do that are wrong. In fact, I had a conversation with Mrs. Professor Penn last night. She's telling me all the mistakes I made the last 11 years, and she's correct. Sometimes we mean well and we make mistakes. Sometimes we're agents of chaos that spread lies under the rubric of being good people.
Mhm.
And we got some of both running around. There's some people in Minnesota that are just dumb. They're just dumb or they're well meaning. I don't care. But we have to vote. And why I say if the pipes break, the first time the pipes broke, we all said, oh, shit, the pipes broke. That's strange. The next time they break a pipe, more people are going to wake up and say, why are the pipes keep breaking? Why do the ballots keep being printed on the wrong size paper? Why does the power keep going off? What kind of scam is this?
Mhm.
And what we need is for people to wake up. And I said this to you, and I want to say it to all the people that are listening. That wall came down in Berlin. It was a complete totalitarian state. If you stepped out of line, you went to the gulag and you died there. We're not quite there yet here in the United States. And that wall still came down because the people actually have the power. I've been to Beijing many, many times, maybe 100 times. All the people that run China
Mhm.
live behind a giant, they live in a giant walled neighborhood. The wall is, I don't know, 45 feet tall. It's probably 2 feet thick. And there's, a road to get in, and there's a tank, you know, pointed out with its machine guns and its turret pointing at the traffic, just in case you thought you were going to try something. The people, if they want to take that Communist Party down, they'll swarm that place and kill all those people. That's just the way life works. We have a representative government. It's not representing us because we're not demanding it. So I'm going to vote on election day. I'm going to wait in line. I hope it rains the whole damn time. I hope it's 35 degrees. I hope it tests my spirit. I really do. And if you're old, now, hey, I'm not a young person anymore, but I feel young. And if there's somebody 15 years older than me that's in a senior living facility and they can't get to the polls, I want when I want people in Minnesota who are in the MAGA movement, who are in the citizens movement, to call your local senior living facility and find out when voting day is and go down there with your camera and film it because they're there harvesting ballots. That's what they do. We know that's what and they always say, on X, oh, there's no evidence. Well, let's get some evidence. There's no evidence because we haven't been collecting the evidence. Some people have. And guess what happened to them? They're not free right now, are they?
Political prisoners.
Yeah, let's just, anyhow, I took a long digress on two issues. Go ahead. I'm going to quiet down, please.
No, no, you continue.
Well, I just, what's happened to Steve Bannon is what's going to happen to all of us. All of us. If we lose, no, that's a reason to stay home and stay in your house and not get engaged, right? But let's say you have a child that's, I don't know, 22 years old, and they're out in the street, and maybe your courage is not sufficient, but your child's out there protesting, your child's going to disappear. I mean, really, we don't understand because we're not historically steeped what happens when communists get control. There have been 3 attempts now on President Trump's life. Was that reasonable to say? At least 2, and then the bomb. There was some explosives that were found this week.
Well, so that there's mixed stories about the explosives from the rally or in a car from the rally.
Please, I'm not up on.
Yesterday, there's some saying there were explosives, some saying there weren't. It was misreported, so I have to do a little more research into that. But yes, there were 2 attempts at President Trump's life. It should have never happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the fact that someone was able to get within 400 to 500 yards of him on his golf course when he decided last minute to go play golf, once again, reeks of someone on the inside telling this person where President Trump is going to be. Butler reeked of an inside job. This reeks. How does a man that is from North Carolina, lives in Hawaii, get all the way from Hawaii to Florida to get within 500 yards of President Trump with an AK-47? It just and President Trump didn't decide to play golf until last minute. It just doesn't.
It's a little spooky.
Yeah, something doesn't smell right.
When communists get control, when they really are in control, I think there was 60 million Russian citizens killed when the communists got control of Russia. Now we think, oh, no, no, these are Americans. They wear business suits. They look just like us. But inside their heads, when you unpack their heads, they're not like me. They're not like me at all. They believe in something so foreign to what I
Mhm.
believe. Now, I wouldn't kill them. And if the American citizens get control of this government, because we do not have control of this government, I wouldn't advocate mass jailings for these people. This myself personally. I think the right model is the Nelson Mandela model in South Africa with the Truth Commission, where if people came to the commission, now the true ringleaders, you got to jail them. That's it. Because there's some people that you can't let them. But there's hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, if not tens of millions of people that are complicit in the overthrow of republicanism.
Mhm.
And how do we know this? Okay, so in our Constitution, if everybody just I don't know, take a little time and read the Constitution. It's cool, right? It actually says that every state in the Constitution, it says every state is guaranteed a Republican form of government. What does that mean? We don't even know what it means. They don't mean the Republican Party. The Republican Party stole the name. Well, they didn't steal it at the time that President Lincoln started the Republican Party. It was still a cool thing, right? He said, "Oh, I'm taking that name. That's who we are." But that's not what the Republican Party is today. It's only half that way. But where every state is guaranteed a Republican form of government, yet in 1946, the Truman Doctrine, we started the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. We've already had our governance overthrown. We just didn't know it. They've just been slowly boiling us. The heat's coming, and all of a sudden we're waking up and free speech is gone, which I want to talk about. Every time you're on, I have to hear about how Steve is doing and how you're doing and what's going on. Just a little. It's not to be prurient. I think that the audience would like to hear. If you don't want to say, go tell me to move on. But
Oh, no, he's doing well, I mean, as well as can be. He's a political prisoner, but we email every day, and I actually was in New York City earlier this week for a screening of Government Gangsters, a movie that it's a War Room Films movie, or a War Room film, and there was a gentleman there that actually had served time with my dad. So this gentleman was inside the Capitol on January 6th, was never investigated by the FBI right after January 6th. When he decided to run for mayor of his town in Connecticut, all of a sudden, the FBI opened up the investigation again, or opened up an investigation. And clearly they didn't want a Republican in that seat. So he ended up being convicted, I believe, of trespassing into the Capitol and had to serve time. And since he's from Connecticut, he and his attorney asked for Danbury. So he happened to be in Danbury. He only had 2 weeks, mind you, compared to 4 months, but he spent 2 weeks in Danbury and got to meet my dad. He told my dad his story, and then my dad told him to get connected with us at War Room and come to the screenings of Government Gangsters, because that part of that has to do with January 6th. And he did, connect with us and was at the screening, but it was very nice to hear, at least in New York City, because that was the first time I got to meet him. He was the last person in that room to see my dad, because the two of us, I mean, we're with my dad on July 1st, but we haven't seen him. My dad is not accepting visitors at Danbury, so it's just the inmates that get to see him, and the guards every day. So it was very nice to hear um, this gentleman's experience meeting my dad and just telling me how he's doing. So he's doing well, and we're a little over halfway through. My dad and our attorneys filed for early release, and it's still pending as of right now with the Bureau of Prisons, but the Department of Justice asked that the BOP reject the request for early release because there has been no change to my dad's case. He hasn't provided new evidence to prove that he deserves to be released early. Not a big shocker that DOJ would do that, because why do they want a man that speaks the truth behind a mic and is able to talk to President Trump? Why would they want him out right before this election? It's blatantly clear that they want to keep someone who speaks the truth and was such an influential person in 2016 that they wanna keep him in prison so that he can't do the same thing again, and it's infuriating. But I know when he comes out at the end of October, it's gonna be
A fury.
yeah,
Yeah. It's gonna be, a marathon. It's gonna be
it is.
and what we're faced with here in Minnesota, I mean, really, we're lacking w Steve Bannon's leadership. Now, the War Room is still leading, and I wanna compliment you on the job you're doing
Thank you.
because you're keeping the flame burning,
Mhm.
right?
Uh,
Not easy.
he left some big shoes to fill, and I'm trying to fill them. But I understand no one can replace my dad, and, you know, I think we're doing a great job at War Room, but we're not Steve Bannon. We're not my dad. So,
I
we
bet you he'd say someone has to replace him. He doesn't
well
go forever.
well, and he said that before he went in. It's next the twisting my words, next man up, because you can't solely rely on one person. And, that comes from the men on the beaches of Normandy. The first wave, when they were shot and killed, those next men behind them had to step up. You can't just cut and run. So, just because he's, not behind the mic for 4 months doesn't mean that War Room's going to shut down and go away. And I think the left thought that. They're like, "Okay, we're putting Steve Bannon in prison. We're not gonna hear from him anymore. We're not gonna hear from his podcast, his show, anything." And they were greatly mistaken. We haven't gone away. We've still been getting the truth out there. It's just not coming from my dad's lips. It might be through email to us, so it's different people speaking it, but, he is still getting the truth out there.
Tanner, I'm gonna ask you, can you put up Marine in my shot just because it's easier for me? Just thank you, sir. You know, I've talked about this uh, on the Professor Penn podcast about that very scene, that iconic scene where the landing is going on Omaha Beach, and you're watching
Mhm,
these people fall,
mhm,
and the next man is coming right, and he
mhm,
probably fell too. But that army
mhm,
moved inland,
mhm,
and eventually the war ended. Not
mhm,
that long afterwards. I mean, it was, you know, a matter of less than a year between when that landing. Now, of course, the Russians were doing their thing over on the east,
mhm,
and that's another thing we're taught that's a little bit askew. The Russians actually were very involved in the defeat of Nazi Germany, which in our history books, we're not taught that, but that's a digression for another day. Those men fell and died. We watched them die. And then we saw other people come and they died. But eventually the army conquered the Nazis and the war ended. Okay. That's a lot like politics. I hear a lot of people um, saying in our um, in our political class
mhm,
that we have to have a certain kind of candidate, that we have to speak a certain kind of way, that we have to perpetuate a certain kind of a myth
yeah,
to win.
mhm.
That's really a big deal here in Minnesota. Can't
I
act
mean,
that
look
way.
how far that's gotten you guys.
Right. It's gotten us to a communist government here.
Mhm,
Right. Great. You know, and Royce has talked a lot about this, and he just walked in the studio, actually. Good morning, Royce. The We talked a lot about this, about Bruce Lee talked about you have to learn the art of dying.
mhm,
You have to learn the art of it. There's knowledge in failing. There's education in failing. What the left wants is for us to lose energy because we lose here and we lose there. But overall, the movement is gaining people and
mhm,
gaining energy. So it doesn't matter to me the day of the victory. It's just that we win, that we maintain republicanism in the United States of America. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what I'm going to be called upon to do. And I don't care. Whatever I'm called upon to do, I'm going to have to do because I know what the alternative is.
mhm,
The alternative is the Democrat liberal order that was great branding for worldwide communism. So I don't want to live in a godless communist state where I am no longer sovereign. That's just me. Now, maybe there's a lot of people that are into that. I don't know. Certainly, there's been a lot of effort to make people be into it by, oh, I don't know, not educating people well,
Mhm.
by making people unhealthy,
Yep.
making them weak,
Mhm.
engaging them in kind of trivial pursuits. Our entertainment is, you know, I used to go to a movie every week. I haven't been to a movie in years because the movies are no longer interesting to
Yeah,
me.
not at all.
So, from my perspective, I I see this, and I don't necessarily. And we say this every time. I like what your dad says. There's no conspiracies, but there's no coincidences.
Mhm.
There doesn't seem to be a coincidence about. I mean, it seems to be such a great number of coincidences. There is some level of coordination. This is me saying. I think it's coming from another realm, but that's just me. I can have my own theories about things.
Yeah.
I can't prove that. Anyhow, those people that fell, when we go here in Minnesota and Royce White is advancing republicanism,
Mhm.
that is as important or more important than win lose. We are spreading a movement. That's what we're working on. And that's what you're going. So you said Pennsylvania's a spot.
Yeah.
Florida? Got something going on in Florida, do you?
I mean, Florida is a red state, and I don't see it flipping blue. Um, there's some Democrat challengers, in the Senate, but it's funny, my congresswoman, her Democrat opponent thinks that she actually stands a chance of beating her, and right after our primary, the Democrat opponent was up in the polls. Well, there was a Democrat primary with 5 people. My congresswoman ran uncontested. Why would you put money in ads when you're running an uncontested race? So, it's comical to me that that Democrat thinks that they're gonna win, um, especially because, and this is just my personal experience in my district, the Democrat, is attacking my congresswoman, saying she doesn't understand the things that people in our county really want. She's out there on the national stage going after things just to make a name for herself. No, she's going after things on a national stage because what happens at the border affects us in Florida. And if someone doesn't understand that, then they're stupid. They're a moron and they don't deserve to be in office. It's not just those states on the border anymore that are border states, border towns.
You know,
It's all of us.
if you think about where we were in 2016 and
Mhm.
then 2018 and 2020, it's the prevailing narrative is collapsing or has already collapsed.
Mhm.
So we're now into the reconstruction of a new narrative, which that's why Steve Bannon is fantastic. But this is you're talking about the elections in Florida. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, but first I'm going to say in Minnesota,
Mhm.
there was all these allegations of election irregularities that
Mhm.
were pushed aside. Well, I'm just going to say, I mean, we're in election season and we're all brother and sister Republicans right now. But in my Republican Party, I was told by a very senior person, you can do these events that you want to put on Penn, but never talk about elections. Otherwise, we're not going to let you put these events on. And I said, what? Promise me. I said, okay, I'll promise. Because we were trying to get things going up here. And then we had this blowout in 2022 where the Democrats got in control of all branches of Minnesota governance. And so the first thing they did was, of course, they passed the Women's Reproductive Health Bill,
Mhm.
which actually does, if you can go, everybody in the country can go look it up. It's easy to find. There's no restrictions on time for an abortion. So
Mhm.
when President Trump said at the debate that the baby can be, terminated in the ninth month,
Mhm.
in Minnesota, that's true. Now, whether it happens or not, that's another issue.
So then he also referenced in the debate, and he got a little tongue-tied on which state he was referencing, because at first he said West Virginia, and then he said Virginia. It is correct. In Virginia, the former governor of Virginia said that children that were an attempt abortion and they survived, if they were born, there was no life-saving measures given to those kids. So President Trump was correct in what
Kind
he
of
said.
kind of Darwinist.
Mhm.
Anyhow,
And there's video evidence. I posted it on my Twitter. There is video evidence of the former governor of Virginia saying that.
I heard him say it.
Mhm.
That's many years ago he said that,
He
actually.
said it in 2019.
Yep. So that was the first bill that the Democrats passed here in Minnesota. The second bill was Minnesota is now one of the 26 states in the union that have what's called AVR, automatic voter registration.
Mhm.
So when you go to get your driver's license renewed in Minnesota, it's not an opt-in deal to be registered to vote. You're automatically registered, which means you have to opt out. So everybody and they're going to spread it to, like, you want to get a hunting license, they're going to register. They want to spread out this governmental.
And aren't they giving illegal aliens driver's license
That was
here
the third bill.
here in the state of
That
Minnesota?
was the third bill that passed, was that newcomers, as they
Mhm.
call them in the White House, newcomers,
Let's be clear, illegal
illegal
aliens.
aliens are given lawful Minnesota driver's licenses. And what was so interesting for all of our back the blue Republicans, every single law enforcement organization in Minnesota backed that bill so that illegals would get Minnesota driver's licenses. So, okay. So now, okay, no crying in the war room, right?
Mhm.
There's no crying if Republicans don't get onto their absentee ballot boards and vet these mail-in ballots, because we're a
Mhm.
mail-in state. We have voting season here in Minnesota. These are our laws. These are our laws. These are the laws of Minnesota. And of course, the Secretary of State, Steve Simon, says it's all okay. It's all good. We're on top of this thing. And of course, they are. They have plausible deniability. They have a
Mhm.
whole process to be sure that only citizens get the franchise of voting, that their illegal aliens are not allowed to vote, that this, that doesn't. So they have the whole thing. They have every talking point scripted out. They're good
Mhm.
to go. But the fact is, if Republicans don't show up and then go on those absentee ballot boards, fight their way on, that's politics. We got outplayed. That's like saying, oh, the other team scored. Well, why? Because our line sucks. It's porous. You know, how many, what was the rushing game today? Oh, we rushed for 375 yards. What? You obviously don't have a defense.
Mhm.
We don't have a defense. And that's why this is my frustration being involved in the Royce White campaign. The people are coming, just not enough of them. So if you're listening to this, please go to the website, be a volunteer. Go to TrumpForce47.com. Be a volunteer. Volunteer. There's like back in the this just came to mind. I never thought of this before. Back in the Civil War era,
Mhm.
and back to the Revolutionary War era, some of the people that fought, their units were called like the 237th Volunteers,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
We didn't have a standing
Yeah.
army. The citizens went and volunteered to fight for their own self-governance.
I mean, we did have a standing army, but it was on one side.
That'd be the wrong side, right? So in
And
Minnesota, that's our vote. Our vote, and then I'm going to ask you about Florida, but Amy Klobuchar, who generally her bills that she solely sponsors is like beautifying the Lake Superior lakefront, or we need 3 more air traffic controllers in Ely, Minnesota. She's very careful about what she puts her name on. She tries to stay out of controversy. She's a solid vote for $4 trillion a year for military and medical. She doesn't want to be caught. And she's succeeded because Minnesotans don't look at her voting record. They look at her smiling face, and they've elected her for 18 years of governance. Okay, great. She's been in power 18 years. But on this deal right now,
Mhm.
she is the sole sponsor of a federal bill called S2747. And it is the federalizing of elections. And I read the bill, and it was about, oh man, it's hundreds of pages long. And you know why I went through it so quick? Because all they did was they took Minnesota election law and they said, oh, that's good. We're federalizing it. So I'm curious, this is my preamble,
Mhm.
what's going on with Governor Ron DeSantis and your election laws and your election strategies in Florida? How are they different?
Well, side note really quickly, when you talked about going to his campaign website to volunteer, you know, if you're not in the state of Minnesota and you can't volunteer to do things like boots on ground, donate. Donate so that it can help him do things here in the state of Minnesota
Well,
with
let me just say before you go back to Florida,
Mhm.
donate. Why? Because I have watched Royce White turn down money from sources that would seek to control him. I've watched people say, "Hey, Royce, come, we want you to bend the knee, kiss the ring, and we'll give you money." You know, he speaks to those people, not very kindly. I'm not gonna no reason for me to swear, but he swore, and I enjoy it. And we're still dealing with that in the campaign, and we're dealing that in Minnesota. We're as a campaign, we're a people's movement. We're a movement of the people. If the people don't show up, hey, we'll be back next time. We're not going away. We just need more people. So if it's $5, $10, doesn't have to be big money.
Mhm.
If you have 3,300 bucks, I'm gonna write you a thank you card. But I mean, really, we would thank everybody for anything because we need the money. We don't need a lot of money. We need just enough to get the job done. Back to Florida. Tell me
Okay.
about Florida elections.
So there was an issue after the primary. There were some discrepancies with some of the polling locations. However, Ron DeSantis, he might not always be the best governor, but he's done a pretty good job that there's not really a big election integrity issue if you are registered to vote in the state of Florida and you try and register or vote in another state, you are arrested. So in 2020, there was a woman in the state of Florida that was registered to vote in Florida and in Alaska, and she voted in both states and was caught and arrested. So you don't see a lot of issues happening down there. US citizens are the only ones that are allowed to vote. We're not giving driver's licenses to illegal aliens that are invading our state. It's just not, I mean, now we're starting to get a few more illegal aliens than we did before, but that's why we don't seem to have an issue down in Florida.
Well, that shows the difference between having Republican governance and
And let's
Democrat
and let's
governance,
be
right?
clear, I don't think Ron DeSantis is MAGA by any means. He has come around and endorsed President Trump, but it was like pulling teeth for him to endorse him. However, he understands what would happen if we allowed in Florida what you were allowing here in Minnesota.
You know, when you say you,
It's you personally why Tim Walz did
that's
this.
great. You know, I feel that way. I actually, I mean, why I comment on it is I go into these moments of kind of, I don't know, maybe it's schizophrenia. I don't know what it is. I go into these moments, like I feel personally responsible for these things. But I think that's what American citizens have to do. I mean, if 3,000,000 of Minnesotans felt personally responsible for this, hey, this would be over real quick, wouldn't it? We'd be into the next phase of
Mhm.
Minnesota. But people abdicate. They don't take their power seriously.
Well, I think a lot of people also, when it comes to elections, they don't do their research at all on who's running. If you actually researched the Democrat ticket, why in your right mind would you vote for them?
Benefits. That's why. There's a lot of people that want benefits. They're not voting for republicanism or freedom or for their right to worship as they see fit. See, republicanism is it's interesting. Republicanism is a movement of the
Mhm,
spiritual. The Democrat liberal order is a movement of science and the material.
mhm.
So it's the little shiny object. You know, when the newcomers, the real first newcomers came, they saw, oh, there's natives here. Let's offer them some baubles and some beads in exchange for their lands. I mean, I don't even know if that's true, but that's the story we're told, right?
Mhm.
But people reach for something that's tangible. And I understand that. I have that in my own life with people. I mean, if you're a materialist
Mhm.
and everything for you is about materialism and money, and you don't have a spiritual life, first of all, how I live, you can't access it. I can access how they live. I pay my bills.
Mhm.
I work. I drove to the studio today in my car. I
Yeah.
mean, I understand materialism, but the people that don't under or haven't built a spiritual framework in their lives, they don't get
But
republicanism.
what benefits in the 3.5 years? that the DEI hire has been in there? What benefits have you received?
Well, that's a good point. So now we're getting into perceived benefits.
Mhm.
I don't want to go there, but you can proceed because they have their agenda. They have a very specific platform and cohort that they're marketing to, right?
Yeah.
Tanner, can you play that clip? I think that's a great segue. Play that clip that we're going to have one clip today, and we're going to go into a little conversation of foreign policy.
Chizba boom boom boom, and I'm here to say ayo, ayo. We have a name for this operation. Operation Below the Belt. Damn, we have the biggest balls. But are you left with any? I mean, you gotta laugh about it. You know, when you will get out of the hospital. Without fingers, without a wee-wee, without the ability to see. It's very hard to eliminate you one by one. You were attacking us for 11 months with rockets and suicidal drones. And we did not even shoot one bullet. Just a beep. And in the best case, you had just your fingers that flew off. Boom boom in the streets. While you were in shopping. Maybe you should just stay at home. Not a good neighborhood to live in. We were thinking to ourselves, what does every Hezbollah terrorist carry with them? It's two things. One American student close to their hearts and a beeper under their belt. But how could you know? Just a couple of months ago, you purchased those beepers from Iran. I mean, if you can't trust Iran. Actually, you had to think just a little bit. If someone got to Ismail Haniyeh on Iranian soil, those people can make your balls boil. I know, it's embarrassing. Hizba boom boom. Boom, 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 boom. All over Lebanon and in Syria. Someone put something in your beepers. This is so Yichya Ayash. The mega terrorist just wanted a new phone, but he did not know that we got to his phone first. We just planted something inside. He exploded on the first hello when his dad called. So anyway, everyone here in Israel are sending their hellos, and Hizba boom boom try not to explode. Because this is what happens, beep, when a lion roars.
Wow. That is a influencer coming to us in impeccable English from Israel,
Mhm.
taking a victory lap about really a horrific event that took place. And I personally find that disgusting. I mean, I'm so offended by that my blood is boiling.
Mm.
So when you talk about the DEI hire,
Mhm.
that's what I'm just going to say back what you said, right? The issues that are confronting the country are so dangerous
Mhm.
and so complex. When I'm going to say to me, she's a beautiful young woman. I'm going to presume she's Jewish by self-identification. Of course, I could call myself an oak tree because the Jewish people I grew up with would never talk like that.
Mhm.
The death of an enemy is not to be celebrated. It's death. It's awful. So when we have people that are running the country that are in trivial pursuit, uh, if we, the American citizens, leave this to the people that are currently running things, there's going to be an unprecedented bloodletting in the world.
Well, in the debate, do you remember when Kamala said, "I went over," she tried to have a conversation for peace between Ukraine and Russia, and then days later, Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yes.
So clearly she's not respected, and she tried to say that President Trump is not respected by world leaders and that he's a disgrace and that they're laughing at him. No, ma'am, I think they'd be laughing at you. Clearly, you, you couldn't even accomplish a peace agreement that you tried to go do. So you really think that you're going to be respected as president of the United States? No, we'll be in multiple endless wars if she gets control of the White House.
We're already in multiple endless, wars, and she is in control of the White House. Wars? We're in these wars. I think the wars are already ongoing. Ukraine. Wasn't this guy that they just found at the golf course with this AK-47? Wasn't he
Yeah,
somehow?
he went over to
Yeah.
Ukraine.
Well,
Mhm.
isn't he an American citizen?
He is.
And how many American mercenary citizens might be over there fighting right now?
Oh, I'm
Right?
yeah.
Who are we fooling with that? Well, we're fooling ourselves, but we're not fooling Vladimir Putin.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care if they're wearing the army fatigues of the U.S. military or they're wearing the Ukrainian uniform, and when they kill them, oh, American passport. What a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how many people are over there, but I do have some insight to how many contractors were over in the sand pit with you during the Iraq situation.
Mm-hmm. And she also said that we don't have any active duty personnel deployed in war zones.
That's crazy, isn't it?
There's a video of soldiers deployed in Iraq watching the debate. Like, did she really just say that?
Or in Syria, for example. I mean,
we have service members in Syria, Iraq, and a few other countries, but those are the two that
well,
I'm
that
willing
whole,
to name right now.
that whole area is a conflict zone. We have, I think, CENTCOM's in Qatar, isn't it? I think we have our biggest deployment of intelligence assets and command and control is in Qatar. Oh, that is the country where Hamas is also domiciled. Isn't that strange? Doesn't that make you say, like right down the block? Maybe they go to the same club. Maybe the golf course. Because, the United States military operates like 400 18-hole golf courses around the world.
No, we don't.
Yes, you do.
What are you
Look
talking? What
it
are you
up.
talking
Look
about?
it
What are
up.
you talking about? We don't golf. Excuse me, we don't.
No, you don't, Captain.
I do. My dad taught me when I was 6.
Okay, well, if you would have stayed in and gone up and been Colonel Bannon.
However, when I was in the Army, I think I played golf twice my entire almost 9 years in, because my dad taught me when I was 6. And he said, I want you to be able to play so that when a business deal is done, because a lot of business deals are closed on golf courses, that you'll be able to be out there and be part of it and not be like, oh, sorry, I can't do that because I don't know how to play. So that's why he taught me. And actually the 2 times that I did play when I was in the Army, they were both scrambles, and we had to use most of the holes. We had to use my ball.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Does General Bannon still golf?
I have not played golf with him in a few years, so I don't believe that he has been out on the golf course any.
5 hours on the golf. Golf's about a 5-hour deal.
Well, about 3 or 4.
Uh,
5 if you don't play so well.
Well, what about the club afterwards?
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
5 to 6 hours, including time.
And I'm not going to get down on President Trump. President Trump needs his exercise.
I'd love to play a round of golf with President Trump. Now, I'm a little hesitant too, but
The next sapper's going to jump up with another AK-47. That's crazy. That's just crazy. So my point in playing the clip was, we're sitting around in this election talking about, and the Democrat Party is marketing domestic issues, really, right? Now, there is a group of people that we're interested in that Steve Bannon started talking about years ago, before it was popular. In fact, it's not popular yet. Our candidate, Royce White, is talking to these people. All these people that are on the left that are diagnosing this problem identically to the people on the right. They see a uni party. They see a military-industrial complex. Let me tell you, my mother and father were in the streets in the 60s. They were the ringleaders. And what they were fighting was the military-industrial complex. They were communists in the street fighting for change. I mean, they didn't see themselves as communists because people can be self-deceived. But they were on the front lines fighting the military, fighting the Vietnam War. I got pictures of my dad chaining himself to a fence. The classics, right? And what happened was in 68, when McCarthy lost and Nixon became president, I remember my mother, I was young. My mother looked at me and she said, it's been great being your mom. I'm going to law school. Grandma Bess is going to raise you now. I'm going to law school. And I have to do this because she felt as motivated as I feel now. I'm going into the system. I can't beat it from the outside. I have to go inside. And that's what they did. They went into the system and got co-opted. So that whole movement of leftists from the 60s went to law school, went into government. They went in with the best of intentions. They got on the payroll, and a few parties later at P. Diddy's club, they were under management. They were well managed. They were well managed. They were a well managed group of people. You know, just sidebar. I don't have any 8x10 glossies. I'm just reading what is going on in the X. But
the X.
but the point I'm bringing out is, I think it was Lenin who said the best way to control the opposition is to lead it, and that's what happened. So the people that run our country really don't care if we have a Republican form of government or a Democrat liberal order form of government. They don't care. Doesn't matter to them. The real giants of the world, they don't care what game we get caught up in. We care because we don't want them to rule us. But we have all these trivial, they're only trivial you're only good or bad by comparison. In peacetime, some of these issues, like women's reproductive health, I understand the centrality of the issue for women and the importance of equality, not equity, but equality. I believe in those things because I'm a Republican. My mother used to always say to me, because, man, she was a leader of this women's rights movement, a leader, an attorney leader, okay? She used to say to me, all the gains of women can be wiped out in an instant. What she was saying to me is, if these crazy-ass white Christo nationalists ever got control, they take away all of women's rights. That's what she meant. No. If we have a nuclear war, there's no rights because there's going to be no governance as we know it today.
And also, abortion is not a right. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that you have a right to murder. Abortion is not a right, and it's not health care.
I'm being kind. I'm being politically kind.
I know. I know I'm not going to get hate from your audience or War Room's audience. The left for sure will hate me for that, but I don't care. It's not a right.
You know what I believe? I believe that, like, when Royce White talks about the black community, he's knowledgeable, articulate, and he's in the community. He has every right to talk about it. I'm working on the Jewish community pretty consistently, more and more all the time, and being raised in an Orthodox environment, and I think I have the bona fides to talk about it. Now, if I start talking about the black community, I can comment on it, but it's not really, from my street corner, I don't think it's appropriate. And I think it's kind of strange when I start telling women how I think about it. I'm not looking for a fight. I think if women would step up across the spectrum of beliefs and engage with each other about this, I think that would be great. Because then, people wouldn't have to pop into areas where they can be easily maligned because they're not women or they're not black or they're not Jewish. I don't like it when, I look at X, there's so much anti-Semitism on X. It just really, it's terrifying, right? And I look at it, I go, boy, a lot of this stuff is, this analysis is pretty hard to refute. It's pretty straight up stuff here now. A lot of this is going, okay, whoa. I mean, look at that woman. Who celebrates the castration and the crippling of thousands of people like that? That is gross to me. Now, I know there's a lot of Jewish people that are celebrating. I know that there are. And I celebrated in 1967 in the 6-Day War. I was young when the Jews had just gotten their asses whipped. We just had a genocide, right? Our heads were low. Nobody was proud. Everybody was looking over their shoulders like, whoop, what's next? And then 67, I was celebrating. Oh, wow, look at our people. We just kicked the ass. We kicked ass. But I was young. I hadn't seen somebody shot before. I didn't know what it meant. I hadn't seen people writhing in pain as they die. I hadn't watched that. Now I'm older. I've seen that shit. It's not funny. I mean, it's solemn. Okay, it's a war. I don't like it when people comment on my community. I want my community to work in my community to make my community a true light onto the nations. That's my job. Oh, okay. You go, girl. You got a lot of work to do. There's only a handful of us. Okay. You're half of the deal.
Oh, I know.
It's a lot of work. I think it's brave of you to talk like that. Like you say, this audience probably it's okay, but it's really about getting out into the streets and talking to everybody.
It is, and you see on the left that women think it's okay to, one, have continuous abortions. You know, when I lived in Virginia and I went to the VA in Richmond, one of the specialty clinics, so I had to see neurosurgery or the neurosurgeon because I get migraines. Well, one of the ladies that worked in that office used to work for the Department of Health in Virginia, and she said that there were women that would come in every year to have an abortion. So the fact that it's disgusting to me that women are doing that is a form of birth control. And the fact that they think it is a right to murder their child. It and like you said, like, it's gonna take a lot to get women to wake up to that, but the women on the right, we need to start stepping up.
I look at it historically. I'm not going to just all I want to do is stay in the lane of history. Where did this come from? Okay, because it's as old as time.
Mhm.
But what ends up happening is what is not codified becomes codified. And it was
Well
codified. Go ahead. Did you have?
well, and Kamala Harris, that's one of the things she's running on, that she will codify into law Roe v. Wade and make it a right that you can have an abortion, and once again, she's using fear-mongering and to hit women, and they're not educating themselves. 'Cause if they were, it's not a right guaranteed in the Constitution. The Supreme Court upholds the Constitution. They did the right thing and kicked it back to the states. Now it's up to the states if they want to do a statewide abortion ban, partial abortion, like up to a certain week, that's up to the states. But trying to use fear-mongering to say that Trump wants a nationwide abortion ban, you need to wake up and do your research. And to say, "Oh, all these Trump abortion bans." I'm not gonna
Oh,
curse.
no, I listened to Hillary Clinton this morning. She was on Morning Joe, and she was talking about how President Trump can never take power again because he's a threat to our democracy, to everything we believe. And she's being very honest about it. He is a threat to the Democrat liberal order. He is. He's a wrecking. She said he's a wrecking ball. Yes, yes, yes. President Trump wrecked the Democrat liberal order. Wreck it. Wreck it. Let's go back to republicanism, which is what our governance
Mhm,
was founded upon.
mhm.
But the left, you talk about the Constitution, one of the primary things they're driving at, which we don't recognize yet, is they want a new constitutional convention.
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to take everything apart with the goal of, and here's what they're really saying is that humans are bad. I mean, they're religious people without God. They have a different God. Clearly humanity has a lot of challenges.
A different God. They have no God.
That's having a God. That's my thing. Secularism is a religion, okay? Because underneath, you go down one layer, the people that came up with that idea, they're anti-God. What's anti-God? Who's anti-God? Because they're anti-God,
Mhm.
right? Okay, we don't have the time today to go down the rabbit hole. But relative to the abortion issue, and I think the audience knows it, talked a lot about it on this podcast. You know, we had the Bible and we had Genesis, and that was our creation myth.
Mhm.
And we lived by it for thousands of years. And then Darwin rolled in on the payroll of the British Crown and said, hey, you know what? It's survival of the fittest. In other words, if I'm strong enough to make you my slave, that's good because that's human evolution. That's great.
Mhm.
So they just came up with another story that justified their business model, which is slavery, drugs, and piracy. And then they came up with another thing down there and said, well, there's too many people. We don't need all these people. We have a problem. We have a population problem. That was in the 60s, even going back into the 30s and 40s. Population bomb. Population. Got to limit the population. So they convinced women to be a co-conspirator in a eugenicist, Darwinist population control model.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, I don't know how women think about that. I personally, I don't want to, this is weird, but I'm not going to say it.
No, say it.
You know, I'm not going to say, I'm just saying, I spend my life trying to understand why I think what I think. And I know there's a lot of things I think and do that I don't understand. And I don't like that when I act automatically. I want to have free will to choose. And I would not want American citizens to be employed and deployed in a eugenicist strategy without their knowledge about it.
Mhm.
Okay, at least know that men came up with a strategy to shrink the population of the earth. And they enlisted you in the movement and you agree with it. Because there are women, my mother would be one of them. She had the population bomb by Paul Ehrlich on her nightstand for years. She believed in that. She believed in a woman's right to choose. She believed in the equality of the sexes. But what she really believed is people are the problem. Need less people. Now, okay. Now at least you're being intellectually honest with yourself. Because then you go down to, well, we need less people. Let's kill the old people. Why do we need all these old people? Let's give them euthanasia, right?
Or just during COVID, have them in New York. Certain governors were doing that to kill off the population.
Boy, you're really going there today, aren't you? That's you're not holding back when you talk like that.
No, I mean, Governor Cuomo, that's what he did. He put seniors in nursing homes during COVID,
And the disease spread
and it killed them.
to the most vulnerable. Right. Okay.
And he's
I hope we
a,
get.
a
I
liberal
hope we
governor.
I hope we get this episode up on YouTube. You know, they have very strong rules about this. I just want you to know. Tanner and I found this out several. We don't talk about that. Stop. Can't talk about. You're not Mike. Quiet down there. Anyhow,
Well, it is also, and I pointed this out on Twitter, the connection. One of RFK Jr.'s sisters came out and spoke against him and said that the Kennedy family doesn't support him, endorsing Trump. She was married to Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, that put senior citizens in nursing homes during COVID, and it killed them. So clearly, some of the Kennedy family, we don't care what you think.
well, we care what RFK thinks because he's opened up
That's
a
why I
whole
said
new.
some of the Kennedy family.
I know, but he's opened up a whole new hole in the line about human well-being, which is, this
So
is,
he's the only Kennedy at this point.
well, you know what? I haven't been there.
I'm just saying, the
Haven't
rest of
been
them,
there.
I'm questioning their judgment, not
The living
RFK's.
ones, but the ones that were martyred,
I'm saying the current living
the
Kennedys.
current crop, a lot of them are sellouts. But where they come from, their rut, and the way that RFK has been maligned.
Mhm.
This is another thing. I really don't care. I say this a lot, but I can't stop myself. I won't stop myself. I really don't care what these people do in their personal lives. It's not relevant to what they do politically for me. Now I realize, if you're sitting in a certain street corner and you go, oh, well, this guy did this and this guy did that. No, I can't trust him. Who are you going to trust? The 535 assholes that have given us an endless war and a open border and a crushing debt? Let's go trust those people. And they're just good at hiding their sin. It's not like they don't do sinful, crappy things. They do. They're just better at hiding it. They're just better at hiding it. And then we get these people that don't try to hide it, don't care. They wear their sin openly. They talk about, oh, these people can't trust them. No, let's go trust these assholes that got us on the verge of nuclear war.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
I am not interested today in being a politician, but I am interested in spreading this message. I'm very honest with my audience. I got a lot of flat spots in my life. I've been divorced. Does that discredit the philosophy of republicanism because I've studied it and I can articulate it.
No.
I am not besmirching the philosophy because I'm a human being and I've made mistakes. In fact, the philosophy is a way for people that have made mistakes to be redeemed through self-governance. Oh, did anybody discover that yet? I wonder how many American citizens understand what the founding fathers were really up to. What they were really up to is giving us a redemptive kind of politics. It's such a profound philosophical idea, but it would require you to possibly put down Pornhub and quit smoking dope and open a real book and study a little bit, because it's not something that, things that are easy are worthless.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are difficult to achieve have value, and republicanism has value. It's very easy to vote for the Democrat liberal order. Here's what they say: hey, whatever you want to do, it's good with us. You want to sin? Hey, we'll legalize it.
Oh, you want to kill your child? Go right ahead.
Go for it.
And if you can't do it, we'll kill them by what you put in their bodies. Food.
Wow. 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 This episode better be up on this episode. Wow. Apparently Marina's not spending a lot of time worrying about YouTube these days.
Well, War Room's banned on YouTube.
Thank you for the Professor Penn podcast.
I'm just getting you guys right up there.
YouTube, my overlords, this is a guest here. I know the rules. I think Maureen's going to get me another strike, but that's okay.
Oops, I'm sorry. I'll never be asked back.
No, she's getting me back because on the last episode.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. We don't even need to bring that up.
One time. See, this is payback. This is payback for the ribbon I gave Maureen on her failing to pass her West Point class on world history, which I thought was hilarious under the circumstance of her pedigree. But I'm not going to. She's getting.
Okay, so since you addressed that, I'm going to clear the air right now.
Clarify that.
Okay. My world history professor was very much a misogynist and hated athletes because he tried to play soccer. He was a West Point grad as well. He tried to play soccer. He tried to walk on to the soccer team. He did not make the soccer team. When we had parents' weekend at West Point, he told my parents that I wouldn't come in for additional instruction, basically tutoring, because the volleyball team traveled. Volleyball's a fall sport. So we traveled, so I'd miss his class. I went in like once or twice, and when you make someone feel stupid, they're not going to come back for more. So that's what I told my parents. And then a couple weeks before the end of the semester, he said, take a look around. This is your one and only semester at West Point. I turned in a paper, which was a B paper, according to some other professors I had read it. I got an F, and then I believe I got a C or C minus on the final. I ended up failing the class, and he recommended to the head of the history department that I do not be retained at West Point because of that grade. And thankfully, I was such a good volleyball player that the dean of students, the commandant of cadets, and the superintendent all said, no, we're not going to kick her out. You got to figure something out. So he was shocked to see me the following semester when I had to retake world history. But the hardest part about all of that was having to tell my dad that I failed world history.
What was his rank when you took his class?
He, I think, was a major.
Is there any chance, just asking the question, that there was also a political element to his?
Well, no, because at the time, my dad was not really, he was doing political documentaries, but he wasn't with Breitbart yet. So no, I don't think that it had.
It was just personal.
I think so. I think because I was an athlete and I was a female. I mean, I saw how much he hated women when I was having breakfast with my parents when they came into town during a volleyball weekend, and we saw him in a restaurant, and he started yelling at his wife in the middle of the restaurant. But with all of that being said, that same officer got looked over twice for a senior rank, and this is right before I went back up to West Point for my final assignment in the Army. He went on national television and tried to blame the superintendent. So, this guy was not,
It was problematic.
yeah, a good person, not a good officer, but and tried to blame everyone else for his failures.
Well, it happens. We got him in every.
And look, I made it 4 years at West Point just because I failed world history. I made it 4 years at West Point. I have my diploma, and it's nicely framed and hung on my wall. Just because I might not have been the best student there doesn't mean.
Well, somebody has to be the best, but the point, I think it was it Patton or Eisenhower, one of the really most famous generals, just barely passed.
Mhm.
I mean,
And there's a
I
few.
think it was Patton. I think he barely passed. I
I
mean,
think he was in the bottom 10% of his class, and one of the I can't believe I'm sharing this, but my dad tells this story, so I guess it's okay. During one of the class weekends, I think it was my junior year, so West Point will have, like, junior year, you have 500th night, which is 500 days until your graduation, and your senior year, you have 100th night, and the speaker, I forget what general officer it was, but it was 500th night. He got up there and said, "Those of you in the bottom 10% of your class, stand up." And he was one of them, and he was a four-star general. So he was trying to show that, like, just because some of us were not great students, and I might have been in that 10% that stood up, that doesn't mean that we couldn't go on to do great things. Because a lot of my classmates have actually reached out to me, seeing what my dad and I do, and thanked us for what we're doing.
it's West Point after all. I mean, it's a trade school, isn't it? Kind of in a way.
Yeah, but I think that some people go to West Point or do military service to pad their resume.
Check a box.
Maybe including your governor. I don't Deep down in my soul, I don't believe that he did this for love of country, served his country. He did it for 24 years, but I don't believe that he did it for love of country. I believe he did it to pad his resume, and he lied about things in his military
What
record.
about your governor?
What about him?
What about him?
What about him?
Since you're maligning my Minnesota governor, I'm just curious about if your Florida governor also padded his resume in that same way, in
He
your
could have.
opinion.
I'm not. He could have. However, he's never lied about his military record or what he's done.
My I've said this to you, and I don't know if we're going to get there, and we're going to wrap up soon, but you know, one of the things Royce has said, and this is after years of conversation, we're the peace movement. I mean, we really are. It'll be interesting to see how Steve talks about this when he returns to the microphone,
Mhm.
God willing.
No, he will. Not say he
It
will.
never hurts an old believer like me to say God willing,
He will.
right? So, because when I say a peace movement, we've talked about these forever wars, but we've never really embraced the peace symbol as the unifying symbol of the movement. Because what we say is we got to end the forever wars, which is the inverse of saying, give peace a chance or whatever.
Mhm.
Because the Democrat Party of the 60s, that energy has moved into the MAGA movement.
Well, yes, it has, and the current Democratic Party wants to give illegals all these benefits. They don't and get us in endless wars, but then not take care of those people that they send over to those endless wars.
My point is, there's something very noble about righteous military service,
Mhm.
but it also can be used as a resume filler to credentialize someone who is going to import illegal aliens and run the debt up
Yes.
and get us involved in these forever wars because there's so many military members that come out of that institution that after a reasonable career
Mhm.
go to work for Boeing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Just so we're clear.
And I don't believe that I would have such an issue with your governor had he not lied about so many things in his military record. Be truthful about your record. You can ask me any day what I did in the military. I'm going to be truthful about what I did. I'm not going to say, oh, when I got out, I was almost a major. I was a captain. Just because you were a command sergeant major, you didn't meet the requirements. You retired at the next rank down. That's still an honorable rank. An E8 is still an honorable rank. A master sergeant is still an honorable rank. So do that. Don't put a rank that you were never qualified for on a coin, on your congressional coin, on your governor's website. Even when he came as the VP nominee, he still had it up there. I mean, the campaign went back and changed it when he got so much crap for it.
Well, this is wrapping your politics in a flag of valor, right? Or in the or wrapping your neocon
I have no respect for someone that has committed stolen valor. None whatsoever.
Okay, great. And you served, you're a veteran. I get it. I'm looking at Amy Klobuchar, who wraps herself in the cloth of the hot dish and the ever smile and the Vikings and the Twins and being so kind and nice and sweet and gentle. She's Minnesota nice, man. She's great. And I say this because she looks kind of like a girl that I loved when I was young. So I even like the way she looks.
I
So
would never admit that.
no, I'm being, well, if you saw this girl, she was beautiful. But my point is this. I said, kinda. She's 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 an agent of chaos that is wrapped in kind of this package of stability and quietness and kindness. But if you look at her voting record, there's never been a war she's opposed. There's never been a deficit spend she stood up to argue against. There's never been a border she's fought to close. She is not a protector of my Republican citizenship. She's just not. And people look at her, oh, she's so nice. She says, uh, it's a scam. It's pure theater. And so this is Waltz, he's my governor. He's a good politician. He's the guy that blends in with everybody. He blends in.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, he does. I've watched his politics here for years. He's just like part of the furniture, right? And then he signs these bills, right? These people are masters at what they do. They're masters. They control all the levers of power, but their narrative is falling apart. Why is their narrative falling apart? Well, there's a few primary wrecking balls of their narrative. War Room is probably the number one wrecking ball of the post-World War II Democrat liberal order of narrative. It's breaking down. In fact, I'm going to ask you, think it's already broken down? You think their narrative is destroyed?
Almost.
What do we need to finish them off? I know what we need. We need to get Royce White elected to the Senate.
That and my dad out of prison.
Well, your dad is going to be out of prison soon.
And to make sure, because if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are elected, they will put anyone that opposes them. So anyone that speaks the truth, they'll gladly put them in prison, which means that they'll be okay with my dad going back to prison.
And next week's Professor Penn podcast is going to be all about free speech. In fact, I wanted to talk about it today, and here we go meandering around the trail. We never got to it. Anyhow, it's great. Marina's here helping us, helping the American citizens in Minnesota, advance the cause of republicanism, protect our freedoms, fight communism. It is communism. I don't care how they brand themselves. Some people would say it's Satanism. The branding doesn't matter. That is just marketing. You got to take the time to read the ideology, read the bills. You can go to websites that the Congress runs, Senate.gov, for example, or you can go to the federalregister.gov. There is, the government publishes, still to this day, everything that's not classified.
Mhm.
So, you start talking about a continuing resolution. Go read the thing. Go read these. Just take one weekend and instead of watching football, spend 5 hours and read an appropriations bill and look at how they treat your money. Look at what they're doing to your life and life of your children. How casually they will take from you your energy. They're vampires. They're taking from you everything you're willing to give them. And if you keep giving them, they're going to keep taking because they have no boundaries. And Maureen is here fighting for boundaries, also known as borders,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me on, and I hope you'll have me back.
No, well, we'll see if, hopefully you didn't strike me out tonight. I could have got 3 strikes and you're out from this one. What do you think, Tanner? Are we going to make it? Would you do that for us, please?
Man, that's crap.
Hey, don't hate the players, hate the game. It's good to see you. Wish you well. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining.
you. You
Thank you
too.
very much. Thank you.
you.
Thanks.